Hello and welcome to the Deb Calvert channel here on Bright Talk. It's a new year and I have taken a new approach to the presentations that we'll be doing here in 2020. All of the ones that are scheduled for the year, there are one a month already scheduled, those are all by specific request from people who have been followers of this channel and have been so great about giving me input. A big topic today because there are so many. There are literally thousands of assessment tools out there, and I'm just going to cover 17 of them. I'll cover the ones that are for teams. They're specifically designed for or can be easily used for helping to boost team effectiveness. The 17 that I'll be talking about, they're the ones that I'm most familiar with, the ones I've seen my customers using, the ones I feel comfortable recommending to you. So I encourage you to check these out alongside any others that you may already know about. And, you know, I'm also interested in learning about tools for team building. So please, if I've missed a good one, I hope that you'll let me know here live or later on, anytime that's convenient for you. Okay, now all the tools I'm presenting today, these are all well-researched. They provide valid and reliable measures that people can use in a practical way. And every tool that I've selected is also pretty easily available. Some require administration and interpretation by a certified practitioner, but you're not going to be limited to just one company or one provider, as these tools are accessed by a vast network of practitioners. For many of these, you or someone in your organization could also opt to pursue training and certification in these instruments, and where that's a possibility, I'll give you that information as well. Now, in full disclosure, I'm not certified in all of the tools that I'm going to be presenting to you, but I am familiar with them. And I also want you to know that I don't accept affiliate marketing arrangements. There's no kickback to me, nothing in it for me, if you choose to use any of these. I am Deb Calvert. There are some tools I'm certified to help you out with. If you are looking for resources, give me a call, send me an email. You've got my email address and my social media handle up there on screen. If I can't do it, I'll help you find someone who can. I offer these webinars and put this information together because I just think it's good practical business sense to share what I know works. I share a lot of content. You'll see some of it in the attachments. If you haven't already, be sure and take the PDF of these slides in case you want to take notes along the way. Notice that there is a companion article that I've provided for you that will say some different things than what I'm saying during this presentation. And don't miss the link, the attachment that I've given you there that has all of the tools I'll be talking about and links to how you can access those if you want to explore them further. Well, let's jump right in. So assessments for teams, different from assessments for hiring or assessments for helping people that are your high potentials get ready for a next level job. The tools I'm talking about are useful for teams, for building collaboration, for helping team members to do a better job working together to achieve their shared and their individual goals. There are lots of advantages to the tools I'll be presenting and others like them. When you administer an assessment to an entire team, whether that's a cross-functional temporary team or whether it's an intact work team, a leadership team, I'm talking about all of them, these benefits really do help to bring people together. They can help people to understand each other more. They can even help people understand themselves more, and they can give the team a tool, some ideas and some thoughts, and even some language that bridge gaps they might otherwise have and quite likely misunderstand. So I'm a big proponent of using assessments for teams, but, and this is a big but, this is an important distinction, I'm only a big fan of using assessments for teams if you have carefully selected the right assessment, the one that's right for your team, and if you've also done some planning for the administration of the assessment and the follow-up after it. So first things first, the most important thing before you pick any assessment or get attached to the idea of one that you really like, the most important thing is to zero in on the needs of that particular team at that particular time. Sometimes I'll start with a very generalized survey or interviews with team members before determining what the solution might be that will help them. Not only does that help me to be a little more precise in prescribing a solution, but even more importantly, that gives everybody on the team a voice in shaping the plan and informing what's selected. And because of that level of buy-in, it makes whatever you do with the tool more useful. So yes, I'm describing a two-step process, but that is time and money that's well invested versus making a mistake or doing something generic that doesn't really take root. So a caution to you here at the beginning, I'll give you a different caution at the end, but here at the beginning, as you think about assessments, don't get overly attached to one that you've been familiar with. Maybe you really enjoyed it, maybe it really helped you, maybe it's the latest, greatest, maybe it's coming to you free, maybe it's already in the toolbox of some established partner or internal partner that you have. But before you let those be the selection criteria for the tool you use, go back to the team, assess what the team needs, and make sure that you're not trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. Meet the needs of the team. That's a big part of what makes team assessments effective. I'm going to talk about 17 tools for teams, assessment tools, and I'm going to put them in categories for you. Some categories bigger than others. There are 5 categories. The first one, we'll just call this assessments that are designed specifically to look at the health of the team. These are tools that are looking at how high functioning the team is. These are diagnostic tools that help you to be more deliberative in considering how you can get people on your team working together. Because these are team health assessments, they are assessing every member of the team as an individual and then rolling up and presenting the group averages back to the team so it stays safe and people don't feel exposed in some way. You can also, and maybe you have, do this informally. You don't necessarily need a team assessment tool. A generalized survey like the one I mentioned, or just checking in occasionally with members of the team can also be useful. You may even want to start there. But when there are opportunities for the team to become stronger, or when the team has in some way gotten off course, you might find that it's useful to look at some other tools. You've probably heard of this first one. It's widely used, and it comes in a couple of different forms. I'll talk about both of those to clarify any confusion. This is just known as the Team Assessment Report. When the team has especially long-term ties, and when they have big goals to accomplish, I often use this one, the Team Assessment Report, or TAR, from the table group. It measures the team's assessment of each other and how they're doing working together. And that comes directly out of the book, the Patrick Lencioni book, called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Now, this has also been rebranded. You may see the very same material known as the 5 Behaviors of a Cohesive Team. Either one is going to give you the same information. It's just what's different is how you access it and what level of certification or training you might need to administer it. Either way, though, that the TAR, it surfaces behaviors that team members can focus on to improve their ability to trust each other, their ability to engage in healthy and productive conflict together, and from that trust and that healthy conflict, how they can gain commitment to their shared goals with each other, be more accountable to each other, and ultimately do a better job of driving for results together. Now, because team members are rating each other, they're rating the team as a whole, I generally don't use this tool with teams that have only recently been formed. They don't have enough to work with. For people who don't have a lot of history together, this tool is far less revealing, far less impactful. Now, while the behaviors within the tool, they're still important to know, they're still good to strive for, but the assessment's only going to be guesswork until team members actually do work together. Now, when the TAR has been completed prior to a team building workshop, which is what I strongly recommend is the best practice, the assessment and then using that to construct a workshop for the team, what that gives you an opportunity to do is identify the strongest areas of team need, right? That the collective responses, they're all tallied up, and this pyramid that you see on screen, it comes back to you with green, hey, this is pretty good, or yellow, bars in the pyramid, meaning could use some work, or red, this is a big priority, this is a problem for this team. And then you can see within the assessment the behaviors underneath each of these 5 areas that can help you to do that work that's necessary. If you decide to become certified in this tool, there are many providers out there who can help you do this. I've given you one that I'm very familiar with in the attachment, the one that's got all the links to the various tools. And remember, I don't work on an affiliate marketing basis. There's nothing in it for me. I just like to recommend people who I think do a really good job. Okay, as long as you're assessing a team, here's another consideration, something else that you could do. You might be familiar with Belbin. What Belbin does is they give you an assessment that is going to help you identify the roles that make sense for each member of the team. Now, Belbin, it's better known in Europe. You can go to the main site, which I gave you a link toward, and you can be sure you change it so it shows you in dollars and shows you in the U.S. how to use this if you're based here. There is also one authorized dealer in North America for this tool. This is all just for purchasing the reports, though. You can administer and interpret them on your own. You won't need a certified practitioner in this case. So I gave you an example on screen of something that comes out of the Belbin report. It says things like, hey, if you get into a situation where you need someone to analyze the competing options, somebody on your team who's really good at doing that is, and it gives you that sort of insight about each of your team members. It tells you which team members are best suited for various kinds of challenges your team might be facing. Let's talk about a different category altogether, one that's more familiar to many of you probably. There are so many of these out there, personality and preference assessments, and there are so many knockoffs of the really good ones, and there are so many misunderstandings and misuses of those really good ones that I did want to spend a little time talking about how to use these effectively for teams. First of all, I do think it's a good idea to go ahead and get certified, to attend the training about a tool before you use it, or to bring in someone who is familiar with it. Even if you're able to access the tool or some knockoff version of the tool without attending those training courses, I can tell you firsthand that there is such depth and so much rich insight that you can get when you truly understand a tool inside, outside, backwards, forwards, and when you truly put in the time to understand how the tool works, you'll be able to give so much more to your team than just the superficial report that comes when you administer the tool. Now, these tools, almost all personality assessments, they have more in common than they do that's dissimilar. Most of them come from the work of ancient Greeks way back in like 500 BC, and the more recent work in early 1900s of Jung, most of them come from that work. They take different approaches, though, from that work, and they often break things into different dichotomies to make it look different, and because different things resonate with different people. I really do like, out of all of these, my favorite is the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI, I know this tool is not for everybody, and it's not for every situation. I also know that there are some schools of thought out there that say this tool isn't as valid. But I have to tell you, that's not the tool. Those are some of the knockoffs of the tool, some of the bad stuff that's been done, like, you know, posting on Facebook, which Star Wars character has your same MBTI style. There's a lot of bunk out there. But the real tool, used correctly, is very, very effective. For teams that could benefit by developing individual self-awareness and appreciation of others' differences, this is the tool I do really prefer. I use others when the need points me toward others, but I find that this one has so much versatility and so many broad applications that you can do something not only once with a team, but over and over and over again. There are new things and greater depth that you can get to. Now, MBTI, it looks at 4 dichotomies. It looks at extroversion versus introversion in how people prefer to take in and process information. It also looks at sensing versus intuition. That pertains to what type of information a person most relies on. And then it looks at whether we make decisions based more on thinking and logic or more on feelings and impact on people. And then the 4th dichotomy is how we navigate through our day-to-day, either in a more planned and organized fashion or in a way that's more spontaneous and responsive to new inputs. As I said a moment ago, an experienced MBTI practitioner can take your team much further than the general introduction to this tool will take you. And some of those knockoffs, the ones that are free, for example, they probably won't take your team anywhere near the full potential of this powerful instrument. I know it's really sad because so many people have experienced watered-down versions of MBTI, and they think they're doing everything they need to do if they can just remember their 4-letter combination. But they haven't really seen the full power of this tool, and they haven't been able to understand themselves, let alone their team members, in the ways that this tool can help them to do. So MBTI, it might be an appropriate choice for teams that want to improve communication, improve collaboration, want to do a better job with shared decision-making or learning or conflict resolution. You can get all of that in one tool. But knowing in advance which of these needs to focus on makes it possible to use the MBTI in a highly specialized way that yields much more than a what's your type curiosity. Now, this is only available through CPP in partnership with the Myers-Briggs Foundation. I can't say it often enough. Those free versions, they're not valid. There are 4 official and validated versions available. The lower cost ones, those are called Form M and Form M Self. Those are the ones that are most commonly used in universities and at a lot of companies. But for only $10 to $15 more, you can get the full version that goes into much greater depth. It's a lot more valuable for understanding all the facets of an individual's personality and preferences. Right? That preferred version, the one I really like, it's called the Step 2 Q, and it has tons of great information. There's also a Step 3 form with 222 different items discussed in the interpretive report. And that deluxe version, there's so much there. There's so much there that I seldom use it with teams. I more often use it in one-to-one coaching because it's just too much for a team to take in. Now, there's another really popular tool out there, broadly known as DISC. But I have to tell you, there are numerous publishers who have created and licensed DISC programs and iterations of DISC that now go by all kinds of other names. But everything DISC, and I should rephrase that because that's the name of a program, all things pertaining to DISC, they all came from initially the work of Young, just like Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs with MBTI. And then it got fine-tuned by the work of William Moulton Marston. He also worked just as everyone else did with an early work from the Greek philosophers. Those early Greeks, they associated personality differences with elements like fire, water, air, and earth, or with temperaments that they called choleric, sanguine, phlegmatic, and melancholic. And so Hippocrates and Aristotle and Empedocles, a whole bunch of other 400 to 500 BC philosophers, they all explored these theories. And Marston's work did too. His early work focused on human emotions and how we behaviorally display our emotions to other people. So all the DISC and related assessments, all the personality profiles really, attempt to simplify that. And Marston attempted to simplify it into 4 generalized types. Now, the original DISC, capitals all the way across, capital D, capital I, capital S, capital C, that publisher was Performax, but then later on Inkscape had a version, and then that was acquired by Wiley, but they don't have a lock on all those other iterations out there, so that's why you hear people referring to DISC in a variety of ways with some changes in their languaging and labels and assignments of different colors. I attempted to give you 3 different versions on screen here so you could see those different titles that are used for each of the 4 breakdowns, as well as how the colors are not consistent between them. Now, Wiley's program is everything DISC. The I is a lowercase, and it is useful for teams because it generates both individual reports as well as comparative reports so that you can map your team members and you can get a snapshot of team culture. And you can recognize the Wiley program because it's always spelled with that lowercase I and typically includes the word everything in its title. Social styles, that's a lesser known version. There are many of them. It's just one. A lesser known version of a DISC type model. And you're seeing that it's still 4 quadrants or 4 different categories, and that there's the use of color, and that there is some overlap between what those categories are and how that they're used. But it's confusing. If you've ever had somebody who you're administering DISC within your team, but they did some other version of DISC somewhere else, pretty soon it can be kind of challenging for folks. Here's another one that I like. This was previously known as StrengthsFinders. It's now branded as Clifton Strengths. And you can purchase assessments that report on only the top 5 strengths, or you can get an assessment that goes much more in detail that gives you in order all 34 of the items ranked for the individual who took the assessment. For a team, the top 5 is usually sufficient because you're looking for ways to identify common ground and also looking for who has unique strengths on the team. And if you get much deeper than 5 for that kind of work, it just really gets diluted. Now, it's important to understand not just the labels of those strengths, but what they actually mean too, the full description. The best practice is to create a grid and then show the team member strengths all in one place. Right? You can group the strengths into the 4 domains of teams like you see on screen here. That gives you a really good overall picture. What you're seeing in the second row, like achiever, arranger, belief, those are all 34 strengths. The 34 strengths were then grouped into these 4 domains of team strengths. The individual strengths related to each of the team domains, right, it's displayed in the appropriate column, and that can give you a good snapshot of where your team does a good job and where your team may have some opportunities to improve. Now, you're going to notice right away that these 4 domains of team strength, executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking, they're not entirely dissimilar to the 4 aspects of personality as presented with DISC. So there are some really interesting things you can do if your team uses more than one assessment. And that's why it's a good idea to work with a practitioner who's well-versed in multiple instruments. I do want to give you a small red flag about this tool. It's unfortunate that this is happening. You can get ahead of it, though, if you know about it. Something I've run into several times in teams that use this tool is that people start to think that somehow they're exempt from the work that doesn't match up to their strengths. So please be careful in how you message about this tool and keep that in check so people know that the expectations for team members don't change, perhaps just the opportunities that we have because of knowing our strengths will be handled differently. Okay, another personality assessment that you might know about is Hogan, the HPI. Hogan is one of the better known assessments that's based on the 5-factor model. The 5-factor model, it's a psychological construct that says personality is divided into patterns of thought, feelings, and behaviors. And those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors come from these 5 factors, which are levels of extroversion, neuroticism, openness to new experiences, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. So this school of thought says that these 5 factors are not influenced by culture, but are more linked to genetics and are displayed at all stages of life. And what HPI is doing is it's looking at behavioral tendencies that stem from these 5 factors of personality. The assessment that you're most likely to use, it's the HPI Bright Side Inventory. The Bright Side Inventory looks at where people are, what they're doing when they're at their best. And it looks at those in subscales. The scales are adjustment, ambition, sociability, interpersonal sensitivity, prudence, inquisitiveness, and learning approach. Now from that, HPI has a lot of different offshoot products, and I'm displaying just a few of them here. You can also assess the dark side of personality to learn more about how people will respond under pressure and when they are failing. You could do a reasoning inventory to find out how adept someone is at evaluating data sets and making sound decisions. And then there's the one called MBTI. That's all about understanding people's values and motivations. Hogan prescribes that one as a leadership tool, but I found that's really productive for facilitating self-awareness and team building as people come together and talk about their values and they peel back the layers to understand themselves and other people on the team and the choices that they make. Here's another one. Now, I want to tell you that this one, something interesting is going on with it right now, and you could access this for free, and it's totally worth doing that. HEXACO considers that there are 6 factors of personality, the same as the 5 factors I've already mentioned to you, with one addition, which they call the honesty-humility factor. And just like Hogan, this includes subscales. In fact, it includes more of them. Subscales are like facets. And within HEXACO, those facets are things like sincerity, fairness, greed avoidance, and modesty. Those all come out of the honesty-humility factor. And these are not measured as pointedly in the HPI, the Hogan assessment. The other scales and the subscales are slightly different with HEXACO, but not in any big dramatic ways. Now, the creators of this instrument, they came along after the Hogan creators, and they're using newer and emerging thinking about those 5 or 6 factors of personality. There's not yet universal agreement on the breakout of those factors. That's why you have an opportunity to get this for free right now. So there are 2 versions of this assessment, HEXACO. The shorter one is known as the HEXACO 60. The longer one is the HEXACO PIR, that stands for HEXACO Personality Inventory, something else, I forget what the R stands for. But these can be completed as a self-assessment, or you can have an observer. This is kind of unique about this one. You can have somebody else, one person, observe and comment on what they see in you. So you appoint your observer, they fill out the questionnaire about you. And I think that approach is quite interesting for teammates or partners who work closely one-to-one together. So as I said, because this is a newer assessment, there have been fewer test subjects and less time for validation, although it's all on a very positive track. This is thought to be a solid instrument. But if you're interested, you can complete this at no cost. They're allowing that so that they can build a bigger database more quickly, and they can gather, along with test subjects, they can gather some psychographic and demographic info on you that helps them with their validation process. It's all anonymous, though. Now, remember, I gave you links to all the assessments in the attachments. There's one attachment, a PDF, that has links to everything I'm describing here. And this is one of 3 assessments that I'll suggest for you that has no cost at all attached to it. Okay, here's our third category. There are some great team assessments out there that are useful for a team to get to that place where the conflict is healthy and the collaboration is strong. These tools can be used for teams that are fractured, or it can be used in situations where team members seem to be butting heads, they have competing interests. But you can also use these for teams that are already high functioning. The more in-depth you can get to help team members understand each other and their styles, the better, the more high functioning that team will likely be. I do like to use the tools I'm about to present to you in conjunction with other instruments or with other facilitation so that we can use these tools correctly to build that team unity. Now, the instruments I'm about to show you, they don't prescribe any solutions. These are purely assessments. They don't give you a report back that says, hey, here are some things to do next. They're all about awareness. So you'll want to plan for helping people do something with these tools. The first one is the TKI, the Thomas-Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. It's a very, very good tool. For teams that are focusing primarily on having healthy conflict or on resolving conflict, I recommend TKI. When people take the assessment, it's going to give them an assessment back of their natural preferences when they're in times of conflict. And it also will show them not only their primary, but also their secondary tendencies in these 5 areas: to compete when they are faced with conflict, or to avoid the conflict, or to be accommodating of others, or are they more likely to compromise or collaborate. What I like about this is that the tool points out that there are appropriate times to use all 5 of those responses. And the ideal here is to know when to use each response and to become more adept at getting outside your natural tendencies. This is really reliable in predicting which style is likely to emerge when team members negotiate with each other or respond to stress as they're interacting with each other. So a team having that awareness, that gives them opportunities to do things differently, or to meet in the middle, or to understand why somebody is the way they are. Activities that accompany TKI or MBTI or really any other team assessment, they should be customized to the unique needs of that team. And the activities should consider the objectives that are outlined for the team building workshop that you might be having. So that's why engaging a skilled facilitator, somebody who's competent in using a variety of team assessment tools, that's why it can accelerate your efforts to get that team effectiveness and camaraderie that you might be aiming for. Okay, now there's also, the Thomas-Kilmann folks, they also have a team gap survey and a culture assessment. I'm hearing good things about those. I didn't include them here specifically because I just don't have the same level of familiarity. If anyone listening to this presentation knows more about those and wants to help me get my own acceleration in understanding those, I'd really appreciate it. Okay, here's the next free one for you. I really like this assessment. This is the the Trust Quotient Assessment. It is not a team assessment. It's for individuals, but it starts out some great team conversations. When you go to this website, if you go to the main website, you'll want to go to the very top of the page. In itty-bitty type, it says, take the Trust Quotient Assessment. Click on there. In the link I gave you, I took you directly to the page so you wouldn't have to go searching for it. What this is going to produce for you is a succinct little report that's a fine starting point for opening up team discussions about why people trust each other, why they might not be trusting each other, and building some awareness of where you yourself are strong when it comes to being trustworthy. Perhaps more widely known is this assessment, the Speed of Trust Index. This is a little confusing because sometimes this is also called the Trust Quotient. That's not its given name, but they do use that language within their tools. But this doesn't measure the same thing as the one I showed you previously, the Trust Quotient Assessment. This wasn't developed by the same people. It's just a coincidence that there's that overlap. Now, what the Speed of Trust does is it shows you what they call 5 waves of trust with 4 aspects of credibility and the 13 behaviors in relationships of high trust. And this one is a 360-degree assessment. So you get a report back, you assess yourself, you invite others to assess you, you get a report back for yourself, and it tells you how you're perceived when it comes to trust by others on your team. And then there's a leader's guide so that a leader who sees the assessments for all of the team members can roll that up and know what to do with the information that comes back to each member. And then built into this, there's also an opportunity to repeat the assessment 90 days later to measure change now that awareness has been triggered for the team members. Now, I think that there's a strong case to be made for getting supplemental materials with this one too. This assessment doesn't stand alone, in my opinion, as much as some other assessments do. But the materials like the card deck displayed on screen or the books or the other assessments for senior managers and stakeholders, well, they're all pretty good. So if you're a fan of Stephen Covey's work, I think this will be a good fit for you. Like all the assessments we've talked about, this one is statistically validated, it's sound, it's widely used, I've seen it do good things. This is another one about trust. This is a self-assessment that we created here at People First Productivity Solutions, and we invite you to download this for free. You've got it in your links. You can use it as a self-assessment or a team assessment. It points out that there's more to trust than just honesty and integrity. It breaks down all 12 dimensions of trust. Here's FIRO-B. This is the Fundamental Interpersonal Relational Orientations Behavior Assessment, FIRO-B. And it's designed to help people understand their own interpersonal needs and how their needs influence their communication style and behavior. It's a little bit like a personality assessment, but it doesn't focus on those inborn dimensions of personality. It's focusing instead on how people express their needs, what's outward. And it's a pretty good tool for restoring broken relationships or maximizing the potential of workplace interactions. I like it when there are big misunderstandings and lots of misassumptions about people within a team. Now, what you have with this is a device to describe to others what is and what is not comfortable. So it's not prescribing a solution, it's not describing ways to change, it's just simply stating what is and what is not comfortable for different members of the team and what they internally feel and how they outwardly express and how other people outwardly express themselves too. Okay, I got to speed up here a little bit in the interest of time. You might be surprised this next category is leadership assessments. This is not, though, just for leadership teams. It's not only for leaders of teams, the senior management or the appointed leader of a team, although it can be used in that way to help team effectiveness. You could use leadership assessments if you have a philosophy that there's leadership at every level, or an expectation that every member of a team is going to step up and take responsibility in leadership. These assessments I'm about to show you, especially the next one, it's also really good if you have a cohort of emerging leaders and maybe they're doing project work together and they need to show up as leaders as they do that project work. This is the Leadership Practices Inventory, the LPI. It comes out of the work of Jim Kouzis and Barry Posner. The Leadership Challenge, the 5 Practices of Exemplary Leadership, that's all wound around the LPI, although the assessment can stand alone as a self-assessment or as a 360. And you can get an individual report as well as a compiled group report to understand the most frequent leadership behaviors being demonstrated by a team and the ones where there's not as much frequency and perhaps the team could work on that. This one is the most expensive one I've included for you here today. In fact, it's the only one that for some might be a really prohibitive price. This is from Lominger from Korn Ferry. It's based on research-based competencies that improve leadership effectiveness. And this is applicable for teams of leaders mostly, or teams where leaders aren't highly effective, because sometimes fixing the leadership of a team needs to happen before you can address other team needs. You can also generate a group report if a team completes the 360 all at one time. Maybe it's your senior leadership team, and that gives you an opportunity to draw inferences about team strengths and culture. Now, this assessment, it is a very sophisticated tool, and it's also customizable. You get to go in there and pick which competencies you'd like to have your leadership team members rated on from the body of competencies that Korn Ferry already knows are important for leaders. Last but not least, the fifth category, these are very specific competencies that your team might want to work on. These are less generalized. These focus on building very specific competencies that are essential for strong team dynamics. The first one, if you've followed me for any length of time, you've probably heard me talk about this. It's the ECHO listening profile. ECHO stands for Effective Communication in Healthy Organizations. This assessment helps people to identify their dominant habits of listening and to understand that there are 4 dominant habits. Perhaps others have different habits, and that affects the way we hear and receive and respond to each other. So teams that can get to that level of understanding about listening habits, well, it can be quite transformational for them to communicate in all new ways. The second area is emotional intelligence. And I know there are lots of assessments out there for emotional intelligence. I could recommend others, but this one, it's highly esteemed, it's highly effective, it's pretty universally understood. And it's the world's leading assessment tool that's used for assessing emotional and social intelligence. So it's a self-rated instrument. People are going to do self-rating versus a 360. There is a multi-rater EQ 360 that you could use. But I've found that when it comes to EI, that self-assessment's a lot easier for people to handle than emotionally grappling with other people's feedback about such sensitive areas, at least the first time through. Now, this is about how people operate emotionally, and it gives people their strengths and potential areas for development. It has 133 statements, but it only takes about 20 minutes to complete it. It's one of the more thorough, one of the lengthier assessments included here today. And once you complete this report, you can get either a workplace report or a leadership report, and it's going to show the competencies and group up the group for you if you like. Okay, last competency that we'll cover, last assessment that we'll cover is the team culture scan. Many of these team culture type assessments, they're new. Many are still evolving. But if you have a multinational team or a highly diverse team, a great way to promote understanding and awareness of cultural norms and of differences is to get to the work of Hofstede. Right, his work is pioneering. It's all research-based. The culture scan is one of his tools. It generates a report on the 6 dimensions of organizational culture, and it includes 6 statements per dimension, so 36 in total, to describe the team's culture. And then you can use the culture compass to help people from different cultures find common ground and understand their country and their customs differences. That's great when you overlay it with organizational culture. And I am a big fan of the conflicting country norms research that you can find on Hofstede's site. And I've put it all in that attachment for you. Okay, we've had a few questions that have come in, so I want to spend just a moment talking about those questions because they're relevant to this cautionary piece I put in for you. The assessment tools that I've been presenting are about helping teams to be more effective. Assessment tools for selection, for selecting people onto a team or into your organization, those kinds of tools are different from the ones I've presented here. There are some tools that are designed and are better at making predictions and predetermining fit. But let me just say, if you're not well versed in screening aptitude and fit with predictive tools, you'll want to be sure to bone up on that topic or to consult someone who has that kind of expertise. A lot of companies use that, And those are very good tools to consider. It's just not the topic that we were covering here today. Now, what some employers and HR recruiters will tell you is that they're gauging the whole person, so therefore they branch out to use some tools like the ones we've been discussing. And that's where I get just a little bit squeamish, because there's not as much science that says only certain personality types will succeed in certain jobs. And on top of that, you know, tests are fallible, and interpretations of tests are subject to human error, and, well, not everybody tests well, and then you have to layer in cultural and other variables that can come into play. So please bear in mind that everything I've talked about, I'm advocating for team building assessments, and there are other people who are more well-versed in assessments for job placement. Okay, with all of that, please don't forget to download the attachments. Give me a call if we can be helpful to you in any area of team effectiveness. I did include for you in the attachments a special offer if ECHO, the listening assessment, is something that we determine is a good fit for your team. I am offering a special offer to you because you've attended this workshop and stuck it all the way through to the end here. Please don't forget to leave me a review. Let me know what tools you like. I've had a couple of comments already posted. Thank you very much. I'm going to go look into those. And if you have favorites, I very much appreciate you connecting with me on LinkedIn, letting me know what they are, emailing me, whatever works best for you. Thanks so much for attending this presentation. While you're here on Bright Talk, sign up for the one I'll be doing next month too.